RPM, Radio Philippines Network Incorporated, DXKO. Preso sa Sinday Utso sa bayan sa inyong radyo. RPM DXKO, ang radyo ronda dili sa Latayan sa Cagayan de Oro. Sibiyahan na may galaon sa katawan, andang mo serbisyo sa tanan. Ang RPM DXKO Radyo Ronda sakop sa KBP, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Are you a Filipino living in Middle East, Europe, Asia and the Pacific, USA or Canada? You are our story. You are our Filipinos World. The Filipinos World Saturday every 4 to 5 p.m. only here on RPN DXKO 1368 Teleradio. Hosted
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Happy New Year! Welcome to the Year of the Ox. It's 2021. My name is Agnes and you are watching live here in the Filipinos World. Broadcasting live from Cagayan de Oro City, Philippines, powered by RP and TXKO Teleradio. We are also live streaming in Facebook via facebook.com/RPN Cagayan de Oro 1368. Special greeting to Ms. Engineer Jerry Tabaleran of Kuwait, Joy Apostol in Qatar, Conrad Kizan, and George Riquelme in Dubai for the OFWGMA, and all the Filipinos in Middle East. Today is January 2, 2021. The Filipinos world would like to wish everyone a happy New Year. Mga ka-TFWs, right here today, January 2, we are grateful that no less than the chief economist of the PricewaterhouseCoopers in West Africa, Dr. Andrew S. Nevin, will discuss with us in our first segment, 2021 What Now? An Economic Perspective by Dr. Andrew Nevin. And on our second segment, our guest will be the Assistant Secretary of Department of Energy, Atty Leonido Pulido, and he will be discussed on 2021, a perspective on the oil and gas sector in Asia and Philippines. In the meantime, as we have the guest later, please stay tuned with us, and we will come back for a very short commercial break. We will be right back.
Hello, Filipinos world. This is Paul Zuzon, based here in London, UK, founder and managing director of Briley Care and co-owner of Spoon and Rice in Box Park, Wembley. I would like to greet all the Filipinos around the globe a happy, blessed, and COVID-free 2021. Now, let us all continue to be resilient, because we Filipinos are known to be resilient. And let us all continue keeping the faith that the Lord Almighty will see us all through. Maraming salamat.
This is the new normal of traveling. The hottest hotspots are popping. And the bottles of alcohol are flowing. Who's ready to check in? Welcome to paradise.
Good morning, ate! Meron ba kayo?
That we do.
Taray!
Each guest is entitled to a complimentary sanitation kit. Accommodations are by reservation only. Walk-ins will not be entertained.
Huh? Talaga?
Very good.
Meanwhile, we will do what we can to keep the hotel immaculate.
Automatic, oh.
Please step on the circles. Aba, nakaapak naman ako ng tama sa bilog.
Uy, Doy, bakit hindi pa napaandar?
Shiny! So, this is a corner suite?
Sa third floor po kayo, ma'am, sir. Third floor, please. Uy, bakit kaya? Tanungin mo yung driver.
What? It gets better?
Enjoy your stay, Tito!
Travel safe!
Mabuhay!
Pag naglalakbay.
Have a safe trip, Pinas!
Welcome back, and you're still watching us live here in the Filipinos world, live in Cagayan de Oro City, Philippines. New Year greetings to all the Filipinos in the United Kingdom, especially to Miss Eva Mayor of Kanlungan, Filipinas, Feby Dimacali of Filipinos Domestic Workers Association, and Mr. Paul Zuzon of Spoon and Rice in Wembley, London, and to all the Filipinos around the world, happy New Year. 2020 may be considered one of the most years, but to others and to many, it was a year of reflection or providence of coming to realization, uniting people to help each other with the bravest act of our frontliners. It also put us to reflect that family is the most important unit in our lives, and to appreciate the simplest thing we got here on earth. In 2020, the global economy endured its deepest recession in 74 years. And as the COVID-19 virus pandemic affected lives and livelihoods, the recession was unprecedented in its geographic scope and the central role of services and the scale of policy responses. While COVID-19 virus will stay with us throughout 2021, the rapid development and deployment of vaccines will enable a transition to the post-pandemic economy. Thus, we approach 2021 with a mixture of caution and hope. How we faced life pushed us to continue that there can still be hope and amidst these struggles. New Year has come and we welcome it with a bright hope. Ladies and mga ka-TFWs, join me in welcoming the Chief Economist of PricewaterhouseCoopers in West Africa, who graduated his doctorate in economics from Harvard University and MA in philosophy and politics in Balliol College, Oxford University, and his BSc honors in computer science and mathematics from University of Western Ontario, Canada. And he was named strategy consultant in the year 2010 by the Management Consultants Association in the UK. Live from London, United Kingdom, Dr. Andrew S. Nevin. Hello, Happy New Year.
Agnes, Happy New Year. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful to see you too. After how many years? 2 years, I think so?
Yeah, 3 years, yes.
Yeah. Well, how are you?
We're all trying. I mean, it's been such a challenging year, as you said. I mean, people have shown incredible resiliency, but I mean, we're still in the midst of the COVID situation in so many places, including here in the United Kingdom. So we're all trying.
Right. Okay. As I've already made an introduction about this, how we're gonna face 2021. Can you tell us your perspective in our global economy in itself?
Let me start out. First off, let me say Happy New Year to all Filipinos around the world, in every time zone in every country. And it's just it's great to have so many of you here with us today. And sorry if I look down. I have some notes. That the world is so complicated now as we go into 2021. I actually needed to make some notes about this. So now we're asking about where the economy is going. So maybe a few points to get us started. I mean, to begin with, just the economic hit from the COVID-19 it's just unprecedented. I won't even give numbers about the shrinkage of the economy in country after country after country. But we've never seen anything like this since the Great Depression, and we're coming into 2021. And as I said, it's certainly in developed countries, it's not over. So we continue to have real problems in Europe. We continue to have real problems in the United Kingdom. We have real problems in the United States, parts of South America on that. So the economic impact, the health impact, the pandemic, the terrible tragedy there, but also the economic impact of COVID-19 is not over. But we do have the vaccine, so we can look, a little bit past that. And what are the big issues that are coming out? And I think it's fair to say that the complexity of the way we're entering the economy, no one can really predict the future on that. I mean, for all of us who are kind of in business, managing business, I would just say you need to be able to manage in a wide variety of circumstances. But let me just highlight kind of a few of the issues that are on the agenda for 2021. Let me start by highlighting the issues with China and the United States. I mean, we've all heard about Huawei, and they've been banned in the United States. The United Kingdom followed, I believe. I think yesterday or just on Friday, the United States delisted 3 Chinese telecom companies from New York Stock Exchange. President-elect Biden has not said there's going to be a change of real direction with China. They're still enemies of the United States in an economic sense. So I think we can really expect that this conflict, this economic conflict between the two countries continues, which has repercussions around the world, and certainly for the Philippines, very important, because countries are going to have to be choosing who they align with on that. If you look at the U.S. regulations, they are essentially asking you, if you want to deal with the U.S., to decouple from China. And of course, for the countries in the Chinese orbit, it's in the South China Sea, that's a very difficult issue. So I think we're going to find that this issue of China-U.S. economic warfare, if we call it that, is going to continue into 2021, and it's going to be a big issue. I think a second big issue. Sorry, I am putting on my glasses here because there's so many issues. It's just what's happening to oil. So one of the things that's come out of this COVID that's very interesting is, of course, the big oil companies have come out and said that we've reached peak oil. So what is peak oil? Peak oil is when the most oil is used and we start to see a decline in the usage of oil. And people have been discussing peak oil maybe because of renewables and because of climate change issues, 2025, 2030. Big oil has now come out and said actually peak oil is probably 2019. So what it means is the total consumption of oil is going to decline from here on in. And why is that? It's partially because we've had a very weak economy, but it's also because there's been such an incredible growth in renewables. So wind power, solar power, those are all now more economic than using fossil fuels, which means that we can then use more and more electric vehicles. And the new technology that's on the horizon is of course hydrogen power, which has really come along in the last 1 or 2 years. We haven't followed it very closely because of COVID, but all of this means that oil as a resource for the oil producing countries, they face a very difficult future. So if you look at a country like Saudi Arabia, if you look at a country like Iran, they are so dependent on that oil revenue, the oil being at $60, $70, $80. I mean, it's now at $50, and if the amount of oil going up, used around the world doesn't go up, that price is not going to go up again. So I think that's a second big thing to look at in 2021. I think a third big thing to look at is what's happening with technology, right? So we've all seen things going on with artificial intelligence, data mining, Internet of Things, drones. These things are moving so rapidly out there. And there is a big question, how is this going to affect us all? How is this going to affect the workplace? Are we going to have the destruction of millions or hundreds of millions of jobs, as some people have predicted? Are we going to have new ways of working, which I'll come back to, but where you can work more remotely? So that's a third big issue on that. And then let me put maybe perhaps the biggest issue on there for the moment. I'll pause for a second. Is climate change. So the climate change has obviously been coming up the agenda. I think most people in the world now understand we're effectively in a climate emergency. Certainly, the Philippines has suffered enormously from the increase in severity of tropical storms and typhoons in the region on that. And I think now, certainly coming out of COVID-19, I think that people hopefully will embrace this as an issue. But what are the implications for the way people invest, the way the economy develops, what happens to stranded assets? I just mentioned the oil things a moment ago on that. So those four issues, China-U.S. relations, the role of technology, the decline of oil, and the way we confront climate change are really four big issues, and there are more, but four big issues that we're going to have to think about in 2021 as hopefully we emerge from COVID-19. So let me stop there. If there's any particular, I can talk more about any of them, or there's other issues that you think are critical. So.
Okay, you mentioned about the China and U.S. relationship. I wonder, with the newly elected President Joe Biden and together with his Vice President Kamala Harris, will it somehow lift that kind of relationship from being so strange with one another? What's your take on this?
Yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to predict these things. I don't want to make predictions about the future, but I guess my sense as a Canadian, because of course people may not be aware, but right now the Canada-China relations are extremely difficult because we had the CFO of Huawei was arrested, and the Americans asked Canada to arrest her. She's been in house detention for 2 years in Vancouver, and as a result, I mean, the Chinese then went and arrested 2 Canadians on what Canadians perceive as trumped-up charges. They've been in solitary confinement for, I think, 18 months now. Tensions are really, very, very high between Canada and China. And, of course, people might have seen it. Certainly, many of your listeners, the ones in the Philippines, will have seen what's happened with Australia, where tensions between Australia and China have really ratcheted up. And, of course, China has retaliated against Australia in economic terms. It's the largest export destination of Australia, with iron ore and coal and things like that. But of course now they've put things like wine. So you can really see from I think that, and of course I spent 10 years living in China. you can see that the Chinese are rationing up their kind of aggressive tactics in this. And as I said, just 2 days ago, the United States delisted 3 companies from the New York Stock Exchange, Chinese companies. So it's very difficult to see that this is going to be rationed down. And I think President-elect Biden has campaigned on also being tough on China domestically and politically, domestically in the United States. It's very important to, say that you're tough on China, to be able to sort of try to reduce that budget deficit. So I'm not sure that the new administration is going to be markedly different on this dimension. Of course, it makes other countries have to choose their direction. You might have seen, for example, the European Union continues to get closer to China economically. I mean, they're very clear they don't share Chinese human rights values, but they're able to do business with them on that. So, but I don't think it's going to be, my personal view, I don't think we can expect smooth sailing on the China-U.S. front, even though we're having a new president come in.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. There's a growing, dominance of the virtual life, from online classes, online meetings, online selling, and even work from home. Do you think it will marginalize, especially the poor countries?
Well, I think, of course, I mean, what it means is that people need to be involved in life. You've got to be involved in digital life. And I think we need to do a lot of thinking about digital exclusion, right? So people who are not part of the digital world, as you said, are exclusively marginalized. But I think in terms of the way it evolves, for, let's say, some people in poorer countries, it's actually going to help enormously. So I was talking a little bit more about technology. We're just scratching the surface of the way technology can be used to do jobs remotely. So we tend to think of what's happened through this: education, Zoom meetings, normal business, white-collar workers. But the technology is coming along where things that we traditionally think of as blue-collar work can also be done remotely. So, for example, I don't think in the near future, you'll be able to have someone in the Philippines controlling Internet of Things vacuum cleaner for a hotel room in Oslo. So think about what the implications of that are. So you can have Filipino gainfully employed, paid in Norwegian kroner. They don't have to leave their family. They're able to do that job from their home or from their workplace in the Philippines. So I think we're just starting to scratch the surface, and I think some of those technologies are actually going to benefit Filipinos and benefit other countries that coming up the development curve. But it also benefits Filipinos, educated Filipinos, because there's more and more jobs that can be done remote, educated, high-end jobs. So whether accountancy, legal work, obviously programming, backup, BPO types of things. Philippines very strong in that. And I think you're going to see more and more of that, and particularly out of Europe, because, of course, one thing I haven't mentioned, but is another major trend in the world, is the demographic changes. I mean, there was an important report that came out about maybe 10 or 12 weeks ago by The Lancet that just says, look, when we look at the demographics, what you actually see around the world is collapsing birth rates. You see a collapse in the number of children that people are having. And we've reached, outside of sub-Saharan Africa, we've reached peak adults and we've reached peak children. And this demographic pressure, for me, I think in 2021, 2022 is going to be a real theme. And for Europe, I mean, basically every country in Europe has a declining working age population. So Germany, Italy, Spain, France, Poland, Czech Republic, etc. So all of these countries are under pressure. They've got an aging population. They're wealthy, but they have an aging population. How do they deliver the services to them? And I think what's going to happen is you're going to find there's going to be more and more ways for people to stay in their own homes, whether they're in the Philippines or elsewhere, to be able to service those sorts of clients. So I think technology certainly is an issue about leaving people behind, but in terms of economic opportunity for some less developed countries and for Filipinos, and as I said, for the chance for Filipinos to do, all sorts of work at every level of the income scale from the Philippines is coming, and I think that would be a fantastic thing. I mean, we all understand when you're economic migrant, so about 3% of the population lives in a country that's not where they were born. And of course, many Filipinos do, and they earn enormous remittances for Philippines. But it's not ideal to have to leave your family for long periods of time. So I think that changing nature of work coming out of COVID-19, we've learned mean, all these technologies were available, but in a space of 9 months, we've convinced ourselves that we can do all these things remotely. So I think ultimately it may, benefit the world and benefit people in the Philippines on that. But that said, I mean, the other issue with technology, I think, is we haven't really confronted some of the mental health aspects that come out of it. I mean, obviously, COVID has its own specific impacts of it, but just the general technology, when we're glued to our devices, when things are always pinging, when emails are coming, when we need the Facebook likes, all of that is kind of altering our neurophysiology, if you will, and I'm not sure in an ideal way. So I think one thing that we're going to have to start to think a lot more about 2021 is how does this technology impact on our mental health?
Right. With the vaccination, you talk already about the technology, but I'm just curious, with the vaccination, will it clearly eliminate the blunt 2020 style of lockdowns throughout the world?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. Of course, I'm not a doctor, though. I did actually run a hospital in China through the SARS pandemic. Mm-hmm. So this is like what we thought might have happened in 2003 is happening in 2021. I mean, I think that the literature, the things that I've read, because I obviously follow this very closely, is we are going to see certainly by September at least, large parts of population in developed world vaccinated. We're going to start to see people able to travel, certainly between bigger urban centers. I think that the most scientists at this point are saying there's going to be residual, COVID. We're going to be living this for a long time, the way we live with the flu, the yearly flu. So I mean, if you had to ask me a prediction, kind of normal travel, I would say by September or October, I think large parts of the world will be back to normal. But that is still a very long way away, right? And of course, we have the vaccine, but there's still a lot of controversy about what percentage of people are going to take it. There's controversy here in the UK because they've now put the first and second dose 3 months apart, so people are quite concerned about that. So we still have a long way to go with the vaccine. But if I had to predict, I mean, by this time next year at least, I think we'll largely be back to normal. But we may be living with kind of chronic COVID-19, so it's not like deaths will go to zero. We'll still have deaths every year from COVID-19.
Right.
But I think sorry, just to continue on that though, but I think that one critical issue too is just how is this going to impact the way people think about the world and think about their lives and think about the economy? I mean, if I had to put a positive, not that such a terrible thing, but of course, I think a lot of people, certainly in Europe and in North America, are reflecting on the way they live their life, what's important to them on that. So I think we may kind of see, certainly these countries coming out of it, a lot of thinking about that, the role of the government, the role of helping marginalized people. I mean, we've said in this COVID-19, in many countries, we're all in this together, but the reality is, I mean, COVID-19 has been very good for the wealthy. It's been very good for people who are able to work at home. The stock market is soaring. It's been very difficult for other groups on that. And I think there needs to be some reflection after that. And I do think, again, optimistically, I do think that it will, certainly in developed countries, accelerate this thinking about climate change. I mean, obviously, the change to President-elect Biden is a big step forward for the United States. We've got almost every country in the world, perhaps not Australia, but every other country in the world kind of galvanized around tackling the climate change. We have these technologies that are coming, as I said. So I do think optimistically that 2021 will be a really big year for climate change. And of course, there's also, in the developed world, there's a very big difference in values between my generation and the younger generation. The younger generation are inclusive. Climate change is a top issue for them. They don't necessarily view their life totally in terms of material terms. And so I think all of that gives a reasonable future on that. But we need to get that climate change, not just the rhetoric, but the Paris Accord, and for going further, we need to get serious action here in 2021.
Okay, my last question. How do you see the investors' interest with a post-pandemic or with still, as we face with the COVID-19? Will there be a shift from, the COVID-19 and then into something? What do you think?
Yeah, so and that's a very good question. I think that the way I think about it now is basically all investment is sustainable finance. All finance is sustainable finance. Yes. I don't think people in 2021 are going to be able to invest in things that aren't somehow sustainable. And of course, sustainability includes obviously the climate, the environment. It includes kind of inclusive growth, the kind of sustainable development goals. So that shift was already going underway in 2018, 2019. I think the pandemic has highlighted that, and I just think it's going to be such a rapid shift. So then again, the people that are stuck with stranded with assets, the coal assets, the oil and gas assets, they should be from a strictly economic viewpoint, they should be very concerned about the value of those assets. They're becoming stranded assets. Bankrupt. We're seeing in the United States, of course, many bankruptcies around the shale oil boom. But for new money that's going in, it has to be sustainable. Technology is still going to remain critical on that. I mean, all these technologies, not just the internet, but even the physical, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, drones, all of those physical material science, all of those physical things also need to be part of it. But at the end of the day, I think 2021 is going to show people that all finance has to be sustainable finance. So if you have one theme that you're going to go out and think about with your money, I would put that up there.
All right, thank you so much. Your last few words for our viewers here in the Filipinos world, Dr. Nevin.
Well, we've all been through a very difficult year. I mean, as I said, I think it's had a big impact on the way we all think about life, and so I think so a happy new year. But as you go through 2021, really remember what's important. I mean, the economy is one thing, but the economy is not it's not your life, it's not your relationships, it's not what necessarily matters to you. We all need to earn a living, but we need to keep in mind what really matters. So please, God bless you all, and have a safe and prosperous 2021.
And you too. And thank you so much. Live from London, United Kingdom, Dr. Andreas Nevin, Chief Economist of the PricewaterhouseCoopers in West Africa. Thank you so much. Okay, that was Dr. Andreas Nevin. He's the chief economist in PricewaterhouseCoopers in West Africa, and he talked about what would be the in thing come 2021 as we still faced a post-pandemic. Okay, time check now is 4:32 in the afternoon, and time is brought to you by RPNDXKO Teleradio, Pacific Islander Diet USA, Barangay OFW, Ako OFW, OFW Veterans Association, Office of the Philippine Ambassador to New Zealand, Gary Domingo, OFW Global Coalition Development, and Global Women Club Manila. We will be right back.
On behalf of the Filipino Domestic Workers Association in the UK, I would like to greet you a happy Christmas and a hopeful New Year. 2020 was a trying times for all of us. We hope that 2021 will be a COVID-free year. Saan mang dako ng mundo tayo naroon ngayon, sa mga viewers ng The Filipino World, isang mapagpalayang bagong taon sa lahat. I am Phoebe Macali, Chair of the Filipino Domestic Workers Association.
I wake up in a postcard every single day. Each corner a love letter straight from Cloud9. Scribbled reminders to soak up the sun. Everywhere's an invitation to come over. But it's the warmth I find nowhere else that makes me stay.
welcome back. And you're still watching us live here in the Filipinos World, live from Cagayan de Oro City, Philippines. I'd like to greet some of our viewers here in Facebook. Mary Jane Valdezera watching live from Ethiopia. Miss Cecilia Ichabi also watching from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Jasper Yaban, good afternoon and Happy New Year to you. All right, we have our second guest who will be discussing 2021, a perspective on the oil and gas sector in Asia and Philippines. He is the Vice Chairman of the Philippine Exploration Contracting Round, or PECR, at the department's committee that supervises and prepares policies for the upstream exploration of the energy resources in the country. And I'm talking about the Department of Energy. Live here in the Filipinos World, Assistant Secretary, Atty Leonido Pulido. Good afternoon, at ASEC Pulido.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am, and Happy New Year to you.
And Happy New Year to you too. How are you?
Oh, pretty good, considering everything that's happening. Counting my blessings and being grateful that we're here.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you so much. You must have heard about or you must have watched Dr. Andrew Nevin, the chief economist of the Pricewaterhouse in West Africa, and he somehow discussed about, and I would just like to quote him, there would be a decline with regards to the consumption of oil. Do you agree with that? Because some people might be shifting into renewable energy.
Well, yeah, what Dr. Nevin said is it's accurate, it's precise, and the demand really is happening not just because of the ongoing drive or thrust by numerous developing countries or developed countries to embrace more renewable energy, but the COVID pandemic has reduced the use of oil precisely because people were locked down for several months in different countries. Air travel essentially stopped. Tourism essentially dropped. We faced a quote unquote a new normal, and in that new normal, people were essentially staying home, and a lot of industries were affected. A lot of industries that use oil were affected, and so the demand for the use of oil just plunged quite significantly all over the world, in Asia, even in the Philippines. In the Philippines, currently, we have still not yet reached pre-pandemic oil demand or petroleum product demand. We are still using much less petroleum products.
Right. Okay. You had already mentioned, the post effect of this COVID-19 with regards to the consumption and even the demand of the oil and gas. I just want to focus into, has this COVID-19 really affected the purchase power from the Middle East suppliers? And okay, you mentioned already it has plunged, it has decreased. Now, what's the plan? What's the mechanism that the Department of Energy may take into? It could be elevating the need or rising into how this supply can be taken into the Filipinos, demand.
Back in sometime in about June last year, the Department of Energy, working with other organizations, began trying to project how the demand would be in relation to supply,
right.
Current supply. And of course, one of the things that happened last year, besides the COVID pandemic, that could potentially have had an impact on the oil supply in the Philippines was the closure of the PSPC, the Filipino Shell Petroleum Refinery in Batangas. And then near the end of the year, we also received information that Petron was also closing its refinery. And we only have 2 refineries in the Philippines that they import crude oil, and then they refine it, and they will come up with the finished petroleum products. Both companies, however, will be shifting their business model from refining those products to wholly importing finished petroleum products. And so, going back, we did a projection, and we essentially believe, we came to the conclusion that the demand for oil would follow more or less a U shape instead of a V shape. Meaning, our concern was, if considering what happened, the sudden plunge in demand, our concern was all of these companies that are in the business of importing oil. We essentially import 99%, 95% of the petroleum that we use in the Philippines. Our worry was precisely because of the drop in demand that they would not predict the demand, the sudden rise in demand in the future. And we would find ourselves in a situation where there's so little supply in the Philippines, and then demand would suddenly rise, and we won't be able to meet that demand. But working with the private sector and working with other organizations within the government, we felt that the recovery or the increase in demand would follow a U shape, so it should be quite slow. And because of the nature of that recovery or the increase in demand, it's quite manageable. So the Department of Energy has been very strict in enforcing what we call the minimum inventory requirement, which is essentially a rule that requires all oil companies, whether you're a crude oil importer, whether you're a finished petroleum product importer, whether you're importing liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, which is our essentially our cooking fuel in the country, to maintain a certain amount of supply, good for a certain amount of days. So for crude oil, we have 30 days. For finished petroleum products, we have 15 days. And for LPG, we have 7 days. So we've been very, very strict in trying to implement that. However, we are doing what we call a whole government approach in ensuring the sufficiency of supply. We are, well, at least within the executive branch, we have begun convening what we call the Oil Contingency Task Force, which is a small committee composed of different agencies within the national government that is under the Interagency Energy Crisis Committee. This was a committee that's created by executive fiat by previous presidents. So Malacanang called on the IECC to meet and essentially prepare for what could possibly happen in the future in terms of oil supply and oil demand. And so we're doing that. We're currently meeting with our partner agencies in the national government. But at the same time, we've been working with our colleagues in the legislative branch of government, so people in Congress and people in the Senate, to essentially amend the oil deregulation law. Because what we have in the Philippines, the legal framework for the oil industry in the Philippines, it's a deregulated industry. And if it's a deregulated industry, most of the decisions regarding supply, regarding price, are quite in the hands, or wholly in the hands of the private sector. And that's good insofar as business is concerned, because the oil deregulation law was passed precisely to break up what then 20 years ago was perceived to be a monopolistic or a oligarchic market. And that was the reason why it was passed. The problem is, because of that, the government gave up its control over the prices of oil and petroleum products, and its ability to maintain an emergency supply. And historically, for the information of our countrymen, we used to have infrastructure in order to have we used to have infrastructure that allowed us to have emergency supply, and that was Petron. Which used to be owned by the Philippine National Oil Company, but that was privatized. So when the oil deregulation law was passed, Petron was privatized. And it's good because then you have a free market. But it's bad in the sense that the national government's ability to respond to an oil petroleum shortage, to a petroleum product shortage, is quite limited. And so we are working with Congress in order to hopefully amend the oil deregulation law and expand the ability of the national government to respond to an emergency, an oil or an oil shortage. So that's what we're currently working on. Part of that is also hopefully to pass a law to establish a strategic petroleum reserve. So those two things will hopefully be working hand in hand. The amendment of the oil deregulation law and the introduction of a strategic petroleum reserve in the country.
Right. Okay. We are still working on the exploration in the West Philippine Sea for, thinking that there are liquefied natural gas that exists there. What's the status and how are we regulating with the contractors?
So what we recently did, what the Secretary of Energy, Alfonso Cusi, recently did, was to lift a so-called moratorium for the exploration of petroleum in the West Philippine Sea. And we believe that was precisely necessary because we only have one indigenous supply of natural gas, which is Malampaya. And that single source of natural gas powers almost 30% of the Luzon grid and about 24% of the whole national grid. So it's critical that since Malampaya is depleting, that we find a replacement for that. And the Department of Energy is doing two things in order to find a replacement. One is we're pushing for further exploration, not only in the West Philippine Sea, but all over the country to hopefully find more natural gas or at least other petroleum resources. But that was a very important step for the Philippines to ensure its energy security, which is to lift the moratorium. That moratorium has essentially allowed several companies in the West Philippine Sea to stop exploring because of our current dispute with our neighbor. And so we lifted, the Secretary Kusi asked the President to lift it. It was lifted. So we're now currently have an ongoing effort with trying to find more petroleum resources in the West Philippine Sea. At the same time, we have allowed the private sector to come in and build a liquefied natural gas facility. And there are several proponents for that. And hopefully that they would be able to create that infrastructure when the Malampaya depletion occurs.
Okay, right. My last question for you, the Atty Pulido. What do you or how does Philippines address or view with the new president-elect in USA? Does it affect any cooperative participation within the global market of the oil and gas sector?
Well, again, it's too early to tell. But one of the things that could be beneficial for the Philippines is the U.S. has a lot of natural gas. Right. Because of this fracking technology in the U.S., they had shifted from importing natural gas in the past to suddenly becoming an exporter of natural gas. And with the current COVID pandemic, even immediately prior to the COVID pandemic, the prices of natural gas were very, very good. So that it was so good that it was essentially a buyer's market. And if we already had the infrastructure, the LNG infrastructure, and it's actually quite possible that by the time that the LNG infrastructure is already in place, we would still be able to take advantage of good prices for the country. And good prices for the country would mean lower electricity costs. Right. So if we could purchase LNG at a very good competitive price, then hopefully it would impact our current prices, and hopefully it would improve the cost of electricity in the country. And having a U.S. president, a new U.S. president that has a global outlook would also be very helpful because it would allow us to tap that market. So of course it's too early to tell, but everyone is hopeful. With what happened in 2020, everyone is trying to be positive for 2021.
All right. Thank you so much. That was Assistant Secretary of Department of Energy, Atty Leonido Pulido. Magandang hapon.
Magandang hapon po. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Atty Leonido Pulido, the Assistant Secretary of Department of Energy. We will be right back.
To all viewers of the Filipino world, a blessed Christmas and a COVID-free New Year. From Kanlungan Filipino Consortium in the UK, I am Eva Mayor, Chair of Kanlungan. Despite the pandemic and being far from home, let us find the strength in the bond and comfort of our Filipino community everywhere in the world. Muli, isang makabuluhang Pasko at makatatapos.
Aangat tayo muli. Ito ang paniniwalang ating panghahawakan. Sa ngayon, pangamba at pagdududa ang pumipigil sa ating ibalik ang dating buhay. Pero aangat tayo muli. Dahil may isang bagay na hindi kayang kunin ng COVID sa atin. Ito ang ating pagiging matibay, at determinado. Tayo ang lahing hindi natitinag ng bagyo, lindol, baha, at pagsabog ng bulkan. Paulit-ulit bumabangon, ilang beses mang gulpihin ng sakuna. Kaya, aangat tayo muli. Kakayanin natin muli ito. Sa palaging pagsuot ng mask at face shield, paghugas ng kamay, at pagpapanatili ng distansya, hindi mo lang inaalagaan ang iyong sarili. Kung hindi, pati na rin ang mga nakapaligid sa'yo. Sundan natin ang mga ito at magkasamang salubungin ang sikat ng araw sa mga paborito nating lugar. Walang kasiguraduhan ang mga darating na araw. Ang sigurado lang ay kapag isinapuso natin ang pag-iingat, aangat tayo muli. Ingat-angat.
Welcome back, and you're still watching us live here in the Filipinos world. I'd like to greet Mr. Paul Markoviches, who's watching right now live from London, United Kingdom. Okay, for comments, suggestions, feedback, please get in touch via our email address, thefilipinosworld@gmail.com. You may also follow us in Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube channel, The Filipinos World. If you want to become one of our sponsors, please send your intent at thefilipinosworld@gmail.com. We also wish to thank our guest for this afternoon, Dr. Andrew Nevin, the Chief Economist of the PricewaterhouseCoopers West Africa, and of course, Atty Leonido Pulido, the Assistant Secretary of Department of Energy, for gracing this afternoon's episode. Next week, January 9, 2021, we will have two powerful women to join here in the Filipinos World, and with our segment, Women, the Pillars and Backbones of the Society. And we will be joined by the chairperson of the Philippine Commission on Women, Ms. Sandy Sanchez Montano, and the wife of Consul General in Dubai, Consul General Paul Cortez, his wife, Mr. Yasmin Balaja Cortez. So please stay tuned with that and watch for our episode by next week. And unfortunately, KTFW Danny is not with us today because he's still not well. And we wish him to recover and be safe always. All right, this has been your KTFW Agnes. And no, I have to thank some people who have been so supportive, and without them, this program would not be possible. Ms. Jean Cerujillos, the station manager of RPNTXKL, Mr. Bobby Reyes of USA, Mr. Engineer Eli Mua from Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Dr. Mohammed Ali Carlito Asiliera of OFW Co-op Cebu, and of course our technical team, Engineer Ernie Banson and Engineer Jong. Thank you so much for being so helpful with us. Also, our executive producer, Mr. Paul Markoviches, the White Capital Foundation, Mount Humam, of course, the social media team, Volga Dubai, and Miss Owen Sanchez in Dubai also. Okay, this has been your KTFW Agnes, together with, on behalf with KTFW Danny, wishing everyone a very happy New Year 2021. We bring the Filipinos closer to the world. We bring the world closer to the Filipinos, and Filipinos closer to each other. We wish you a very happy New Year. Stay safe, everyone. Goodbye.